Hello, everybody, and welcome to Orange First here on the Denver Channel Facebook page. Along with Woody Page, I'm Lionel Bienvenu. Troy Rink is out of Dove Valley. Orange First brought to you by Otterbox. And, of course, we are talking Broncos and the debacle that happened in Philadelphia yesterday and the last 4 games, actually. And we're going to talk quarterbacks as well because today, Woody, Vance Joseph said he's sticking with Brock Osweiler against the Patriots on Sunday. And this was 2 years ago. Remember this little thing?
Yeah. You know what?
Brock Osweiler. That's the Patriots game when he had his breakout. And
that's old news.
It is. It's 2 years ago. Bye, Brock. Yeah. He said he had 1 more week. He's earned the right to be the starter for 1 more week, and then we'll see what happens.
Really, there's no other alternative at this point. You would not, I wouldn't do that to anybody. Throw Paxton Lynch in against the New England Patriots in a game as significant as this is to specifically the Broncos, a night game. I just think it makes no sense. He hadn't had enough work, and Brock, whatever. I think Vance tells the truth. That Brock's, he said, had a good week and led them into it. He's, you know, it was one of those, except for a few plays, kind of remark. So I think Brock does deserve at least 2 or 3 weeks. You're not going to go back to Trevor at this point, and you can't really go to Paxton. You have to, with the AFC West still in turmoil because of what's happening to the other teams. Vance again was right today when he said the divisions kind of come back to them. So they have an opportunity, and as long as they have an opportunity, once that goes away, and I think Troy would agree with me, then you go to Paxton for the rest of the year.
Let's find out. Let's get out to Dove Valley, where Troy Rank was at the Vance Joseph press conference this afternoon. And Troy, we just talked about it. Brock is coming back for 1 more week, and then they'll reevaluate after the Patriots game. What did you take away from Vance's presser today?
Well, they're in a crisis mode at this point. I mean, you're 3-5, efforts being questioned, just the dumb penalties, the lack of ingenuity in a game plan. I mean, it's coming from all directions at this point. And Vance Joseph hinted that the game plan may change. He said that they need to figure out who they are, what is their identity. If I were him, albeit for me to humbly suggest, but he needs to take over and take control. I think he's been too respectful of his assistant coaches and their experience. Some of those guys landed here because they were fired, and he needs to be, it's his name on that top of the letterhead right now. They need to be more assertive, run the ball more, stop using 3 wide sets. But what did he say? Basically, that he watched the film. He doesn't believe guys quit after watching the film, and he stressed to them that, you know, we got to be in this together, accountability, all those messages. But what was fascinating about it is basically 8 games in, they don't know who they are. And that's on him. That's on Vance. That's on these players. But it was what he said. They had to go to Brock. Paxton needs a couple weeks to get ready. I think if they lose to the Patriots, you could see Brock against the Bengals at home. But at this point, I mean, it is ugly. And defensively, they finally collapsed under the burden of carrying this team for the better part of 2.5 years. And that's the concern. Because if the defense isn't strong, you look at their schedule, and what is there, 2 more wins out there? 3? It gets ugly if the defense doesn't stay strong.
Well, Troy, you were in the locker room in Philadelphia. You talked to Derek Wolfe, who was very upset, to put it mildly. A lot of guys, Brandon Marshall said, I don't know what's going on here. But your feel in that locker room from the players last night, how are they going to respond this week going into the New England game in prime time on national TV back here at home?
Well, again, it becomes a personal pride game. Unfortunately, I have a lot of experience writing obits for teams covering the Rockies for 15 years. And baseball allows you to be selfish because of your statistics. Football, when you become selfish, it doesn't work because you freelance and then you do your own thing, and then it just gets worse because you do have to function as a unit on the field for the most part in football. And it's an odd spot for guys who won rings to basically, like, now you're playing for pride. And that, we'll see. That sounds easy, and like, oh, you got to, you know, you're all getting paid, you're professionals, and I get that. But when you've had the success they've had, this is jarring that you're an also-ran and you're going into games knowing nobody gives you a chance. So, you know, adversity defines character, and we'll see what the locker room's made of. But I think we've hit bottom here, Woody. But I said that at LA.
That's right.
Well,
2 weeks ago we said that.
Yeah. So I think it's going to get better. I think they'll play well. I don't think they'll win, but I think they'll compete, and that's the first step because they weren't even they didn't compete yesterday. They were embarrassed.
It can't be any worse than what we've seen. I mean, you say that. I mean, shut out 1 week in Los Angeles, go into Kansas City, and yes, they competed, but they really were never in a situation where they were going to win that game. And then to get blown out in Philadelphia, and I would disagree with the coach. From what my vantage point, it looked like the defense did quit. I mean, they were giving up runs they've never given up that we've seen since this crowd has been together on defense. Offensively, it's more difficult to find out if a team quits. Because what are they going to do? I mean, the offensive linemen, you couldn't tell whether they quit or were playing full speed because they're not very good. I just think that at the midway point in the season, Troy, this is defined. This is the old line of you are what you are. And that's exactly what they are, is they're just a mediocre team. They're not even a 500 team. And as Lionel brought up last night, and you may not have heard it, Troy, he said this harkens back to 1999 when Brian Griese took over and they had no direction with John Elway gone. Basically, that's what happened. Peyton Manning left. He could lead a team. He could lift a team. He could actually be a leader of a team, and they don't have that, Troy.
I agree, and that's part of the issue here is this leadership group. Let's just talk players, Woody. They're not equipped for this. Vaughn's kind of the fun-loving guy. He brings people together, but he isn't going to grab someone by the nape of the neck and yell at them. Talib is more of he's got your back on the field. He's not a guy that's like, that Manning or Marcus Ware leadership. And Trevor Siemian, one of your other captains, is benched. And so that's where I'm saying internally it needs to come from a few guys. Offensively, they haven't had an identity for a year and a half and a leader. I mean, that's just the obvious, the truth. But defensively, they've got leaders in that room that you would hope would stand up and be accountable to this. Like, we're not going to let this spin into a 4-12 season. But again, a lot of these guys haven't been here before. Yeah,
the leadership. That's an interesting choice of words you use there because Lionel's kind of keeping up with it. I'm doing a few polls on social media today, and I'm being blamed for a lot of it. But John Elway is running #1 of who's at fault here. He is the leader of this team. I'm waiting for the John Elway annual conference with his players, but we talked about last night, they've gone from kicking and screaming to being whining and groveling. And John Elway is the guy who put this all together. I haven't heard him come out. If anybody gets mad, he's the guy that got mad as a player at other players himself. I think John Elway needs to step up. You're talking about Vance Joseph. You made a great point. Vance Joseph, I watch him and wonder, he crosses his arms on the sideline and doesn't really get involved. Whether or not he shouldn't be saying, I'm taking some of this control away offensively from Mike McCoy. I'm going to go to Joe Woods and say, I was a defensive coordinator last year. I'm kind of demoting him. I mean, there needs to be somebody, and I hate the term, but somebody needs to slap somebody in the face. And I'm saying that figuratively and say, I mean, Derek Wolfe seems to be the only guy that is being a leader of that team. And guess what? Because of his stance about the national anthem, a lot of the players don't really like him very much.
Well, I think they like him well enough. It's just his problem is he's not healthy and he's not playing the way he wants to. It's hard to lead when he's in pain all the time. But the one stat about Elway where it's completely fair here, in reading an ESPN stat today, the Broncos are one of 3 teams that haven't produced a Pro Bowler from the draft since 2012. I mean, it's come to harvest here. They don't have the depth. They don't have these young players hungry, stepping in and taking over. They have a lot of young players underperforming. And you see a roster aging before our eyes of guys who've won rings. Maybe they've lost the edge. They've lost the step. That young next wave of guys isn't here, Woody. They're just not. That next wave of young players is just not here. And that's what's catching them. And you can't camouflage it with the ultimate guy that Revlon that covers up everything, Peyton Manning. You can be bad at a lot of positions when you have Peyton Manning. He's not walking through this door. And it's a crisis, but I would absolutely, if I'm Vance Joseph, go to Mike McCoy and say, eliminate the 3 wide set. We're running the football. and we're going to run the football, and then when we're not running, we're going to run the football, and then maybe play action. Because when they go into 3-wide set, their line stinks, the quarterback gets hit. The Eagles got more pressure on Osweiler than they have on a quarterback in like 20 years. I mean, the 3-wide set is just an absolute it's just a sinkhole for the offense. Yeah. Run the ball.
All right.
It begs for you to blitz. And the Philadelphia Eagles are not a blitzing team, and they had to take advantage of that.
Right.
You're absolutely right. And they don't have 3 wide receivers that can actually catch the football.
That's the other issue. They're living in denial, thinking they've got 3 receivers who are threats. They don't.
Right. All right, Troy, last thing. You talked a little bit about John Elway and how he's been silent. And Woody's poll on Twitter was who's most to blame for this. I think John got 30% of the blame. Woody himself got 29% of the blame. He's leading Vance Joseph in terms of blame for the Broncos' collapse. Congratulations. I voted for you, Woody. I need you to win that poll. But is John Elway being silent and not coming out and like he did in Seattle in the preseason a few years ago when he blew up the team?
After St. Louis.
After St. Louis, the kicking and screaming when he was looking for a new coach. Is he not coming forward, Troy, because he wants to give Vance Joseph some breathing room, maybe, as a rookie coach?
I think it's part of it. He's his handpicked successor. And if once your GM steps into the locker room, then that undermines Vance. And it undermined Fox. And as soon as he did that with Fox, you could see the writing on the wall.
Right.
So you have to be really careful. Even though Elway's a non-traditional GM, as a former player and a Hall of Famer, once you step in there as the GM and your coach is in the audience, that's not good look for a coach who's really in his, in a major crisis here. You got to let him navigate it and then assess at the end of the year where you are.
All right. All right, Troy, thanks. I know you're going back in the Broncos locker room today, and we'll hear what the players are saying online, on Twitter. Follow Troy Rank, also on Facebook, and, of course, on TV later on Denver 7 Sports Extra. Huh, he just hung up on us. Thanks, Troy.
And since we're promoting, I did write a column a couple of hours ago that I think is worthy of people. Thank you.
He said Peyton Manning is not walking back in the door, but Woody Page's column on the Denver Channel right now, denverchannel.com, you got to check it out. Woody says, laugh and scoff and call me crazy. Quarterback is the Broncos question. Manning is the answer. And we're talking Eli Manning.
Well, let me ask you. You spent a lot of time in New Orleans. You are a Louisiana guy.
I did.
I wrote last year that they should have gone after Drew Brees.
Right.
He is really a member of the Manning family. But now, Drew Brees, why would he leave New Orleans to come to a team that's not as good as what the Saints are? But Eli Manning is being pushed out the door in New York. They're talking about taking away his consecutive game streak that would tie Peyton. That if you couldn't get him now, and maybe if you work the room a little bit, you say release him, and then maybe we'll release somebody later on that you could use.
Right.
But why not go after Eli Manning, about the same age as was Peyton when he came here? Eli's won 2 Super Bowls.
Right.
People are saying, well, who do you go out and get? Colin Kaepernick is not going to be signed by anybody. But who's going to be available for next year?
Right. We talk about Cousins and all the same names that pop up every time.
Cousins not Eli, those teams are not. Peyton Manning came here because it was a playoff team.
Right.
And he could see how good that defense was. How many of those great quarterbacks are going to now say, ooh, Denver is a destination locale for me?
Not until the O-line is fixed. I mean, Eli would get killed back there just like Trevor and
we saw that with Tony Romo. Tony Romo probably looked at that offensive line and said, really? I don't want to go up there.
Right.
So I don't know. And I heard some guy mention Phillip Rivers. Rivers is playing on the same kind of team. He's not going to leave the West Coast. Now he has 8 or 9 children.
Right.
He's not going to come to Denver.
Might be available if Mahomes takes over next year. I mean,
well, really does Alex Smith, even though he was an MVP caliber mentioned player early in the year, he's beginning to come back to earth. They lost to Dallas yesterday. So I think you got to look long line because you can't see Paxton Lynch based on anything he's done up to now. I guess we'll find out.
That's what we got to find out.
I hate those terms. Well, we'll see. But if they lose a couple more games, we are going to see and let him play 5 or 6 games in a row. Right. And at that point, you make a determination of whether you got to go get somebody. And I'm talking about they've only won Super Bowls when they've had great quarterbacks. Right. They don't win Super Bowls when they have average quarterbacks. The only time they ever got really close again was with Jake Plummer, who was a unique quarterback.
Right.
And I'll tell you off the air what happened there. Got a great story about Jake Plummer.
Well, all right, I look forward to that. I know you threw this away saying it's in the past, but this is happening again Sunday night. Brock goes against the Patriots.
And he beats
Last time he beat them. This was his, well, coming out party, coming out on the cover of Sports Illustrated. All right, let's wrap this up, Woody. It's a must-win, obviously, for any hope for the playoffs. Sunday night, Patriots here. If they lose, they've lost 5 in a row. Brock takes a seat, and you got to say Paxton comes in. And then you said, we'll see, we'll find out. But you can't have a Paxton Lynch sitting on the roster who's never going to be your starting quarterback after this year. You've got to find out, I believe, this year what he's about. Or else it's useless to even have him around.
I mean, does he turn out to be a Rick Meyer? Remember that?
Yeah.
You know, a number one draft pick?
Right, number one pick.
Yeah, I mean, there have been guys like that come in the league. RG3 was a bust. I mean, when you look at it, Johnny Manziel in the first round was a bust. Tim Tebow turned out to be a bust when you look at long-term career. There are a lot of first-round draft choices that don't succeed because teams go too high. They force the pick. And I hear people talk about, well, they're going to get the number 8 pick next year. Well, who's to say that any of those guys coming out are going to be great picks? I mean, is the kid up at Wyoming a great player? I mean, Allen,
Josh
who
Allen,
knows?
Yep.
Those guys on the West Coast at Southern Cal and UCLA, Baker Mayfield, I mean, he does a lot of good, but he also does a lot of bad, too.
Yeah.
So,
all right, well, we'll see what happens. We got Brock going against the Patriots. After that, win or lose, we'll see if Paxton gets his chance. And after that, we'll see if Eli Manning gets his shot here in Denver. Go to thedenverchannel.com, read all about it, Woody Page's latest column. Well, here we are, Woody.
Watch him.
We'll be here on Sports Extra all day.
6 and 10.
We'll see you again later this week, Sunday night. And Broncos country, stay tuned. Drama every day at Dove Valley. Never a dull moment, is the old saying. All right, thanks for joining us on Orange First here, brought to you by OtterBox on the Denver 7 Facebook page. We'll see you again next time. Have a great day.